Good morning, internet friends. So, wow, internet friends. That sounds great, doesn't it? Yeah, today's topic is going to be, I wanted to talk a little bit about using Skype for group calling and some of the nuances that might not be apparent when you think about it, and some of the misconceptions that I hear from people, misgivings, objections, you know, this kind of thing. Oh, we should use this instead. Why I think Skype is a better tool for that right now. And this is based on a, setting up a group chat for a fairly decent sized group of people. I think it was 8 people yesterday. And it seemed to go pretty well for the most part. There were some technical issues that a couple of the folks, it worked out for them, but they're probably going to work on them a little bit between now and the next call. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about the process so that after listening to this, you'll feel comfortable going along and doing the same thing. Because one of the people in the call said that they are part of a group at school. And right now, the group coordination between them is not very good. It's being handled by probably SMS and email and stuff like that, or face-to-face conversations. And, considering that, she's been having, she's been talking to people through more productive means, it's very tempting for her to get that stuff moved over into Skype, which she sees as more capable. And it was interesting. We were actually going to have this group call in Discord, which is a group chat for gamers. And we were going to do it in Discord, but then there are some features of Skype that aren't in Discord yet. Then the name of the chief one is that Discord, since it's for gamers, there doesn't seem to be a lot of an emphasis on video. So it's a lot about audio so that you can communicate while you're playing a game. And then of course the game provides the video to you. But, not of the people you're talking to, but, of the game itself. And Skype is more about face-to-face communication with people, which I keep seeing that studies have shown that people are able to more effectively communicate when they can see the other person they're talking to. So I'll get into a little bit of I'm not going to get into the research here, but I'm going to get into like how you would go about setting up a call like that. Now, one thing, kind of a programming note, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but somewhere between my torso and the steering wheel, there is a dark gray smudge. That's not me blurring anything out. I thought it was a little bit of dust or a scratch in the lens or something, but after working through it and looking at it myself, trying to blow it out with a little bit of compressed air and stuff like that, according to GoPro support, there's some kind of problem with the internals of my camera resulting in that, and so I'm gonna have to take this one and send it back. So that's going back to GoPro today for a warranty replacement. I'm curious, maybe some of the people who have like 1 million GoPros and they don't care about warranty replacements because they're a dime a dozen to them. Maybe they've torn one down and they've seen what the problem is. Like, it seems to be pretty well sealed, and I mean the whole thing is it's a waterproof camera, so I'm wondering like what that is. I looked in the support forums and I found a little white blob mentioned, but doesn't seem to be exactly the same thing. Could be though. So anyway, just wanted to mention that I'm probably going to be doing my vlogs in the interim with other cameras, so I apologize in advance for a degradation in video quality and possibly audio quality, but hopefully GoPro will get my camera back to me soonish so I can continue. Another note, I've removed all advertising from my vlogs, so you shouldn't have to deal with that. The reason for that is I was looking at my revenue and I was talking about the revenue with a couple of people, and it was like in the past 30 days I'd earned like $1, and then they have to sit through all these ads and everything. And so one of the guys just like said, hey, if you just get rid of the ads, here's a gift and your gift to me can be removing the ads, and then I don't have to sit through them. And so I thought that was reasonable. So in order to continue that, you know, I think I'm probably going to, you know, just based on past experience, I don't think I've ever had a check from Google for the content, or from YouTube for the content I've created. So I'll just, you know, and I've already received, you know, a gift donation from someone who cared about it enough to have them removed. So the donor wins, and there are no ads. And if anyone else wants to keep that going, or to help me fund equipment to make this a little bit better, there are some things I'd like: a wireless mic, and like maybe some kind of backdrop so I can do stuff from my basement without people seeing my basement. So there are a couple of things I'd like to try and do, but they're not urgent, and so I'll just say I'm gonna start at the bottom. I'm gonna be posting some crypto addresses, so if anyone has any crypto laying around that they want to throw at it, then we can do it that way. So, because I looked at Patreon and I was like reading their terms of service, and I was like, why don't I just put some crypto addresses on there? So, end of story. So back on to the Skype stuff. So what we wanted to do is, a group of people that I was talking to, they wanted to have a group conversation for a couple hours on Sunday. And so I said, hey, and one of them said, hey, you know, I've been talking with people on Skype lately, and it's really worked out well just because of the video aspect of it. So if you guys aren't opposed to being on video, then let's plan on doing that. And I saw those messages, and I said, hey, you know, I'd like to be part of this conversation as well. And I've been using Skype for a long time. So I'd be really happy to just handle, kind of, you know, be the technical coordinator of it, and just kind of sit back and watch the call and stuff like that. And I ended up interacting a fair amount because I'm a bit of a talker, but hopefully everyone involved thinks that I mostly stayed on the sidelines and facilitated. So anyway, how do you go about getting one started? Well, I'm gonna be talking a lot about some of the easiest ways. There are a lot of different ways to do this, and Skype support pages explain how to do this. But I needed to start a group chat and make sure that people knew about it. So what I did is, if you go into Windows 10 in the Mail and Calendar app, you can go and create a new calendar appointment. And I don't know if you have to have Skype installed or not. I'd imagine you might, but you might not. I didn't test it because I had it installed. But you can just go in there and create a new calendar event for the meeting that you want to have, and then there's a button and it says create Skype meeting. So what that does is that gives you a URL, and anyone who receives either a copy of the URL or the meeting invite, which is sent via email — I'm not a big fan of email, but for the purposes of meeting scheduling stuff, it's kind of a lingua franca. You know, lots of different calendar apps can support it. So yeah, the guy that was kind of going to be running stuff, I got his email address and I invited him to it, so at least he had it. And I just created an appointment. And then when the time came, we went and we got the app. We had kind of a group of people that were kind of involved, and we kind of I started by just doing a group call there. That's not ideal because one of my friends from Australia was there, and when I did the group call, I kind of forgot that he was there. So even though it was Sunday my time, it was 6:30 a.m. On Monday morning Australia time. So luckily he was going to work that day, so he was already getting up and getting dressed, and he hopped into the call and he's like, what's going on? And you know, he had not been part of the original conversation. So yeah, we talked a little bit about that, and he hopped off, and I talked with him later. He said everything was cool. But yeah, so that reminded me, I don't know if it's a feature that's gone away, but if you're using the desktop version of Skype, there are a lot of commands, and you can type /help, and it'll give you more information on how to learn more about the commands, as well as a summary of some of the most common ones. And one of the features that's incredible about Skype, and I hope they haven't gotten rid of it, is the ability to type /go live. And what that does is it starts a call in whatever chat you're in, but it doesn't ring anybody. So, you know, the call just kind of, anyone who knows that we're all going to meet here at a certain time, they go in and they see that there's a call taking place and they can join it. And I think it even appears in there, like, on some versions of the Skype client, like maybe the iOS and Android one, and I think on my phone, it was apparent that there was a call going on even before I was in the chat, maybe. I'm trying to remember exactly what happened. I know that I saw somewhere that I could join it. But yeah, you can, you see that a call is going on, and so you can join it, and it just helps with awareness and makes it easier for people to get in. Now, one of the things that I did also is, if you look at the calendar appointment after you've made it in the Windows 10 calendar app, if you just hover over the meeting, then a dialog pops up and it shows you like just join meeting. There's like a button right there. So it's very well integrated if you're using Windows 10. A lot of the guys were using Windows 7, and so they were having a little bit more trouble. But it seemed like minor stuff, and it's, you know, stuff to, you know, I'll talk about more in a second here. So what this does is when you create the calendar appointment, it gives you a link, and people who have Skype installed, when you click on that link, what it did for me is even though I have like several different versions of Skype installed, so it asked me which version I wanted to use to handle that. Now that's because I have not set a default, because sometimes I like to do different things in different versions of Skype, but a lot of people may have kind of a default version, so it's not going to ask you that. So what happened is that a couple of these people, maybe they wanted to use it, like I think one of them wanted to use it in the desktop version because that's more familiar to him, but it lacked some of the features of the Windows 10 version. So I tried to encourage people to use the Windows 10's, like the Microsoft Store version of Skype, but you know, I was helping people otherwise. So if you join from the link, it doesn't even require you to log in. It doesn't require you to have a sign-in, so everyone kind of popped in. But then a couple of them made requests like, oh, I'd like to use it in this version. I'm like, well, okay, to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add you as a contact personally, and then I can invite that user, like after you're signed in, to the chat, and then you can go and open up any version you want, and then you'll be invited to that chat. So you'll see it in your list of conversations, and you'll just be able to open it from whatever version of Skype you want. So that's what we ended up doing there. One guy had trouble with his camera, so he was trying to open it up. He was trying to get in the Skype call, and we kept seeing that there was like a little spinning icon, like a little spinning loading thing whenever he tried to do video. And he said later on, once he finally was able to be connected, that something was having a conflict with his camera, and so Skype wasn't able to use it, so he just kept trying over and over, and eventually he was like blocking more and more apps from using his camera until he figured out what it was. I don't remember what it was in his case, but eventually Skype didn't have a conflict anymore and was able to open and use the camera, so he was in the call. His audio and video was pretty great. He wasn't using a boom mic or anything, so he just had, I guess, a really good microphone on his webcam. The another guy, he had a really nice looking set of headset. I think it was a Bluetooth headset, and his video was really good, but his audio kind of sounded tinny and distant. And the way I described it to him is it sounded like Capcom officer in like a NASA launch, or you know, in NASA spacewalk broadcast or something. It just sounded like it was a much lower bit rate than anything else. So he's probably going to take a look at seeing if there's like an update to his Bluetooth drivers, or maybe he's using, you know, maybe he's going to have to switch to another Bluetooth device. I'm not tremendously experienced with troubleshooting Bluetooth stuff, but I know that sometimes some devices, they use a lower bit rate, and it can sound, you know, it sounds more like a telephone call, or like something over a walkie-talkie, something that's a little bit lower bit rate. So, oh, there's a school bus stopped over there, so there's some traffic stopped, but I should get to go through here in a moment. So yeah, those were some of the issues. So yeah, I would just encourage you, if you start a Skype call, like what I would probably do going forward, the consensus seems to be that rather than have a new group every week, we're just going to use the same link that we used before. And the way that I'm going to handle administering it is we're going to just have anyone who wants to join add like me or whoever the facilitator is beforehand and get them added to it, and then we'll all just show up at the same time, and anyone, like the first person that shows up, they can hit start. Because now in the old days, Skype calls were peer-to-peer, so like if I started out the call, then everyone else would be going through my connection and it could be a little bit laggy. I was a little concerned about that because we had people from all over the United States and possibly overseas calling into the chat. But it doesn't do that anymore. It actually spins up the call and bases it out of like a data center. And so one of the nice things was I had to drop off the call, I think about 45 minutes before everyone else wrapped up. And I warned them, I said, you know, I'm not sure how this is going to work, but I have to drop off the call. So if that happens, just one of you guys can restart the call and it shouldn't be an issue. But yeah, I dropped out and everyone else was fine. So even though I was the facilitator and I started the meeting and got it started, it took place, I think, pretty well without a hitch. It would have been nice to have some more people with video cameras in there, just because the video camera aspect worked really well. And it was nice to finally kind of meet people, you know, just kind of see what their facial expressions were like. We'd heard people talking with, you know, Discord in some cases, so we've heard their voices before, but it's really nice to be able to like put in like a face to the voice, like some kind of deep down human thing that you feel, I guess, like you know someone a little bit better and you can understand them a little bit better. So that was a really good experience. Let's see, I'm trying to think of anything else that I'd like to talk about. I mean, one thing that Skype does, a lot of people commented that they had not used Skype in a while and that they were very surprised at some of the features it had. It did have some pretty cool things, like, you know, they were like, they're not necessities, but they were helpful. Instead of interrupting the chat, a lot of things that you say, like off to the side, because we had like a running text chat going as well, so that we wouldn't interrupt people who were speaking on video. We also muted ourselves a lot, so that was handy, so that we didn't have any background noise from like dogs barking or whatever. But what's nice is that at least in the Windows 10 client for it, whenever anyone said something in the chat, it would kind of like pop up over the video for a moment in an unobtrusive way. And then they also had the ability to kind of add like feedback emojis. So what would happen is, like, if you agreed with what someone was saying, you could send them a little thumbs up. There's a little smiley face that you could click on, and you could send them a little thumbs up, and it would show like your display picture with a little thumbs up. So that's a pretty cool thing if you want to show someone support or whatever without interrupting them with your voice, and say, like, you know, someone's like, hey, I won a trophy the other day, and everyone in the group is like, yeah, thumbs up. Then it doesn't really get in the way of what they're saying, but you can also see the feedback. It's a little bit more like some of these gaming streaming services where you can kind of add feedback to the person who's playing without really interrupting them. Another feature that I've used a lot lately, which I wish more people would use. See, one of the problems with the video calls is that we had to go and spend like, oh, I don't know, I think it was like a 3-hour call when I dropped off, and it ended up going for like 3 hours and 45 minutes. So it was a pretty long discussion about a wide variety of topics. And it's not required, but it's kind of polite for people. I mean, pretty much everyone in the call seemed to be focusing only on the call. So that's a pretty large block of time that you have to kind of set aside to have conversations like that, and you're doing it to the exclusion of everything else. So there are these things called video messages. They used to be called video voicemails, but I think video messages is better because it doesn't tie it to ancient telephone terminology. And a video message, you just you select it out of the menu in Skype, and you can start recording it. It's really easy on the Android client. I've seen it there. You just push the video camera button, and then you hold down the record button and it does a video, whereas if you just tap it, it does a still image. So yeah, holding it down is pretty easy, but those video messages can be pretty long on the desktop. They can be like 3 minutes long. So on the desktop, you just push record and then it just sits there recording while you talk. I like that a lot because it's discrete in the sense that it is broken up into a compartmentalized chunk. You know that if you're gonna watch one, you don't need any more than 3 minutes to watch it to the end. We noticed some problems with the controls where you can't really pause it, at least in the Windows 10 desktop version. So once you start your 3-minute thing, you can stop it and you can go back from the beginning, but you can't really like pause it. One workaround for that is you can save the messages, and then if you're viewing the saved file, then you have like more audio control, or more of audio and video controls, so that you can like pause it and take notes or whatever. So that's nice. But yeah, I just wish that more people would use those, because a lot of times I have something to say that's more than just a quick I am. It doesn't really warrant a whole video call. It's more like a status update on my part. Like, hey, I was working on this and I had a question for you. So, you know, here's the question, and then you're done in under 3 minutes, you know, oftentimes 30 seconds or a minute, and then you just hit send. And whenever the person gets back to their desk, you don't have to worry about syncing up a time. It's just whenever they get back to their desk or whatever, then they can play it, or they can play it on their phone. One concern is that I've had some reports that the messages weren't showing up on various people's devices. So it seems like maybe the feature, even though it's been around for quite some time, maybe there are some hiccups with it. So I plan to submit some feedback on that. But I wish it was built into Teams. We were talking a little bit about Teams. The reason we weren't using Teams is because for right now, and this is supposed to change, but right now Teams requires an Office 365 account, and it only works with people within your organization. So this call wouldn't have been possible. It has really good group calling capabilities, and it runs on the same infrastructure that Skype does, I'm told. So, but you know, I could definitely use we were using the consumer version of Skype, and I think I could use that in most business scenarios as well. We didn't really get into any screen sharing or anything, but that was a capability, and you can screen share with audio. So theoretically, you could even play like a YouTube video or something like that, and then, or a snippet of one, and then everyone could comment on it. So that's an option. I don't know, maybe even if it doesn't have DRM protections built in, you might even be able to watch a movie together or something. So I'll have to experiment with that. Oh, one other thing that someone was asking if we could record the call, because like Google Hangouts allows you to record them, and a lot of these game streaming, like real time, you know, watch me play a video game kind of screencasting things, they let you record what you're doing as you have the call. So what the workaround we did for that was, and one way might be in the future to use Mixer for that, but we might even just switch to using Mixer altogether for it, because it seems to do some of the things that we were trying to do. So I might want to do like set up a test call for that. But and we talked about using Twitch, but Mixer seems to have a little bit lower latency, meaning that when people say something in the chat, it's more immediate that the host sees it. One reason we might not want to use Mixer is that it's pretty much one person running the show. So we would have a lot less video interaction. And so so we might even use have a Skype call going on so that anyone who wants to really participate could, but then use Mixer to broadcast that Skype call. Since we didn't have any of that going, I suggested trying the Windows G command. There's a Windows button on a Windows keyboard, and G, and that opens up the game toolbar, which has recording features in it. And we played around with it a little bit, but it seemed to affect the latency. The person was running it on a Surface Book, which is a pretty hefty machine, and it just seemed like her video froze and stuff like that when she started recording. And that may have just been a temporary glitch. It might not do that all the time, or it might have taken a minute to get caught up. But we ended up, I think, not recording the video of it. There may have been an audio recording of the conversation as well. So I think that pretty much summarizes most of the things that I wanted to talk about. It's just pretty easy to set up, and then it's really nice that all you need is a link, so you don't really need to install anything unless you want an enhanced user experience. Everyone seemed to be able to figure things out pretty easily in spite of them not having used Skype for quite some time. Most of them already, since they were using Discord and other similar apps, they already had their microphone and camera stuff worked out pretty well. Though I did provide a little bit of feedback to a couple of people and just said, hey, here's what I heard. So in ham radio, they call that your 5x5. You're talking about your signal strength and how clear your voice is coming across. So it's just considered good etiquette if you run into someone who's having a lot of times people they'll get a new microphone set up or a new antenna or whatever, and they'll call out to anyone listening, hey, can I get a test here? I'd like to know my 5x5. And then someone listening will say, well, here's where I am, and here's the equipment I'm running, and usually I can hear people like this, and I'm hearing you like this by comparison. And it helps people to kind of fine-tune things. It's considered really good etiquette in amateur radio to put out the best possible signal that you can with your equipment, so to really try to tune it so that people can understand you well. And that's something that's kind of frustrated me about video calling and stuff, especially with coworkers and stuff. A lot of them, they're just kind of not on board with it, so they make it clear that they don't really care. And just as an etiquette thing, especially coming over from ham radio, I just see that as rude. So some of the things that you can do is just, there's a service in Skype called Echo 123, and you can add that user. It's automated, it's run by Skype, and you can call it for free anywhere in the world, and it will give you a little automated message, and then you say whatever you want to say, testing 1 2 3, and then after a pause it'll play it back to you, and so you can hear how your outbound audio sounds to other people. So that can allow you to, in the privacy of your own home, work on different settings and find out what you need to do to make your voice come through as clear as possible. Video, there's ability to video test, so it's nice to have. Ideally, you want the camera to be so that you can look into it. That's the most personable way. And even though I'm really tempted to look at the screen a lot, when I am talking to the actual person, I try to at least glance up periodically and look right at the camera, because that is more of that simulates more looking them in the eye, because it's amazing how people can detect just the little parallax difference of looking at the screen versus that. And you can also tell when people are doing other things, they look down, or they even look down to a different part of the screen, and you can tell. I've been in calls with people where they were looking at me directly when they were talking, but then while I was talking to them, they were they seemed to get distracted, and they kept looking down into some other area of the screen that they hadn't been looking at before. So just for etiquette's sake, be aware of that stuff. And one of the nice things is to just tell them hey, just so you know, I am paying attention to you, but this thing is happening over here that I feel I have to deal with right now. And maybe the person will keep talking, or maybe they'll pause and let you deal with it. One of the people in the call had to deal with something. They're like, hey, I'm gonna have to step away for a minute, so just FYI, I'm still trying to be a part of this conversation, but I'll be back in a couple minutes. And that was fine. Everyone was fine with that. So, but yeah, just think a little bit about your camera presentation. If you're on a phone, it's really good to rotate it horizontally, you know, like this. So I've still got my driving app up, but yeah, just kind of have it like sideways like that. A lot of phones, they'll rotate, so they may start the call on a portrait orientation, but the video should rotate to landscape, and that's going to generally fit in better with anyone viewing it on a PC. If you're doing phone to phone, that should be fine. I get in a lot of calls with older people where it's just like the top of their head I'm talking to, or maybe their chin, because they've got it on a laptop, and due to glare or whatever, they don't really want to change the angle. So there are just some considerations, but most of the people, they just had a really good, you know, picture. My background, I think, was the most distracting one of all, because I was in my basement and I had like a water heater and some, you know, projects I was working on in the background. It was really funny. One of the guys mentioned is like there was someone in there who had a very tidy background. It was just like some pictures hanging on a wall and some doors that were closed, but there was something hanging on one of the doors, and he's like, you know, this is really weird because Mark just has this like background full of like 1,000,001 things to look at, and which detracts from them focusing on what I'm saying and me. So it's much better to have a plain background if you can. But yeah, this guy's like, I'm just wondering what that is, like hanging from the door handle in this like rather like, so sometimes if things are more tidy, I guess it can even be more of a distracting thing to have just one thing out of place, I guess. So anyway, that's it for me. I gotta wrap up. From here on, I'm probably gonna be vlogging via my dash cam, and at least when I'm on days when I'm in the car, until I get my GoPro back. And one thing to just be cautious about, and I'll try to remember to warn people, is that there are some involuntary sounds that it emits, and since the microphone is on the device, it can be loud if you're wearing headphones. So sorry about that. I might be able to cut some of those out in editing, but I try to keep editing to a minimum. That is one video I want to do coming up, is just periodically a check-in with what equipment I'm using and how I'm producing my vlog, because a lot of people have expressed interest in doing the same. And I'm just trying to do like minimum viable vlog. So I just have a really simple camera setup. I'm using very simple video editing software. I'm actually using the Photos app in Windows 10, but I have the Fall Creators update, so it has some video editing capabilities in there. And so the GoPro, when it films, it cuts everything up into like 9-minute chunks, and so I have to put those together in the right order. So I import them, drag them into the right order. I might do a little trimming, and which is a feature I'd like to see enhanced, because one of the things that's typical in video editing software is the ability to have a video clip and then put it at a special spot and say split, and you turn it into 2 separate files. Right now what I have to do is I have to make 2 copies of that section of video, and then I have to drag some sliders to roughly the same point. Usually I'm cutting out a little chunk so the transition isn't that obvious, but it's a little tricky. And then the other main feature I'd like to see in that isn't in it right now is the ability to like synchronize 2 separate videos, like or even more. Like I've got my camera on me, I've got a forward dash cam and a rear dash cam, which you can see it back there in the window. So I would like to be able to synchronize those 3 videos, so that instead of having to go and find it and trim it and put it in like a jigsaw puzzle, I could just kind of have all the video from all 3 of them synchronized, and then be able to just kind of pick which camera I'm looking at, but use the audio from, I think the audio is best on the GoPro. So I'd like to be able to use the audio from the GoPro, but switch to video from other things that are relatively in sync. And if I'm only using the GoPro audio or another audio source, then it actually matters less that it's totally in sync. So right now I've been actually switching, so I use the audio from the GoPro for the face stuff, and then go to the dash cam audio when I go to dash cam footage. So anyway, not ideal, but having it be very low drag on me has helped me to do it every day. So, and I don't know if I've missed many days, but now I learned yesterday in the thing that people seem to be watching it fairly regularly, so that's a little pressure to keep doing it, and also to find good topics. Today's topic, I wanted to get it out there because I thought it would be helpful to people in general on the internet, because I hear a lot of people who have misgivings about doing group Skype calls, and they also tend to, it seems like every time I suggest doing a Skype call, someone says, well, why don't you use such and such instead? And there are a lot of reasons. The most critical reason is that Skype only requires a link, ultimately. Like, anyone can click a link. It requires a link and a relatively modern browser, and you're done. You're in. You can participate. Everything else is more complicated than that, and everything else requires a login, and a lot of the things require that you start embracing a whole ecosystem. Like, Google's stuff works with Chrome. Well, if you don't have Chrome, or Chrome isn't available on your device, like this one, then you can't do that. Or FaceTime, once again, gotta have an Apple product. So I'd like to see those things change. They just haven't changed yet. So, and that's another topic I'd like to do, is just one talking about the alternatives to Skype. There might be groups of people, they don't want to use it for whatever reason. So there are some things I've checked out, and they are alternatives for some things, but unfortunately right now Skype is the only thing that does everything that I want to use in Skype on a regular basis, all in one package. So I use Skype, and then I use a couple other things like Discord and try out things just to make sure that I'm staying abreast of what's possible in all the other areas. But for now, it seems to be the leader in the things that I think are most important, which are, group video calling, the ability to do video messages. I had the capacity, I didn't do it. So I'm a paid Skype subscriber, so I actually had the ability to call people on a cell phone or landline and bring them into the group call too. No one ended up taking me up on that when they had audio trouble. They ended up figuring it out, but that's an option as well. Oh, and one last thing I wanted to mention about the Skype group calls is that we had a large variety of people. Not everyone was in there with video and audio. We had some people who were participating by listening and maybe even watching the video, but communicating exclusively via chat. They were more like lurkers, so you can do that. And we asked one of the guys, he said he was just kind of shy about participating in a wider sense. So yeah, there's like, in one Skype call you can have, that's the thing that I really like about it, is you're not locked in. You don't have to do video and audio. Everyone can just do the part. So you can have people who are just kind of a peanut gallery in the chat, and they're just listening to everyone else talk. But you can have people step up, and you can even transition during it. And one thing I even recommended to people is just to get more video real estate space. If they were using video, you can run it full screen, and then you can do the chat on another device like your phone. So that's just a really rich capability, and ultimately things like cell phones don't even come close to it. Oh yeah, one last thing, the audio quality. If you're doing a Skype to Skype call on a good bandwidth connection, I mean, it sounds like you're right in the room if they have a good microphone. Someone was using like a Surface Book, and I was listening to the audio with good studio headphones, and wow, I mean, it just sounded like it was in stereo. It just sounded like natural human speech. And it drives me nuts when people actually want to have conversations over things like cell phone. Like they're like, hey, call me, and I know they're on Skype, and I call them like on Skype or whatever, and they're like, oh, why didn't you just call me on the phone like a normal person? It's like, because phone sucks. It really does. You have to know their number. It seems like half the people I call them, their number's disconnected or whatever. I call them and they're like, who is this? Because their phone didn't track what name went to what number. Skype, you don't have any of that trouble. You see their profile. Whenever people were talking that didn't have video, it was like pulsing a little blue aura around their icon or whatever. And we didn't have any trouble seeing who was in the call at any given time. People were coming in and leaving, and we paused and just said, hey, we want to welcome so-and-so to the call. And they're like, oh yeah, sorry, I was late. I'll just mute my mic and lurk here for a while and see and catch up. But that kind of thing is just impossible with the phone. So I wonder about people who don't recognize, like, everyone in the call yesterday seemed to think that it was obviously better than any other group experience that they'd ever had, and they were surprised by how great it was because they hadn't used Skype in a while. So I just wanted to get this out there, and I'm also probably going to share this video with the Skype team because it's probably rare that they get this kind of feedback on a total end-to-end. I started a call with a group of people who hadn't used Skype before, and here are the issues that I encountered. So anyway, if you want more of this kind of stuff, please like and subscribe and set your little bell thing so that you get notified when it uploads daily. I usually don't do it on weekends. And then also I am starting to add some crypto accounts at the bottom, so if people have any cryptocurrency or whatever just laying around and they would like to contribute to helping me afford improving this, or incentivizing me to keep working on it, or just keeping it ad-free, then chipping in a little bit my way is definitely going to incentivize me. So that's it for me for now, and you guys have a great day. Bye.